Mountainous Roar, the Mitsune heavy bowgun. How does it compare? Like many people who are a heavy bowgun enthusiast or just a gunner enthusiast in general for the Monster Hunter series, upon seeing Mitsune's Mountainous Roar, its heavy bowgun, and that absolutely juicy 6 rounds of Pierce 3 ammo, we all probably thought we had a new best in slot Pierce heavy bowgun. However, upon further testing, it's definitely up there. There is just one problem: Steel Assault. I swear to God, I have nightmares about this damn thing. So I then did my standard testing, taking into account individual shot damage as well as the tick rates. I then did overall magazine comparisons, testing how much damage you will do over the course of a magazine. Averaged these out, which gave us this chart. Hopefully you can see that shot for shot, basically Steel Assault always wins. And in terms of overall magazine, again, Steel Assault is still winning. Which then I add into another table, which looks like this, which gives us the average shot, the average magazine damage, the average burst, and the average sustained DPS. Steel Assault is on average 15.4% better, which is actually meaning that the second best heavy bowgun in the game for Raw, specifically, Pierce, essentially, is Mountainous Roar. It doesn't quite add up to what Steel Assault is doing though. And just because I know someone's going to mention Gore Magala heavy bowgun, this is it on screen. Although in burst it is doing 13.38% more, but it loses 1.5 in sustain and loses 24.4 in overall magazine damage. This is the third best raw heavy bowgun. However, for testing all of these, I literally just spec'd in Crit Boost 5 just to work out a rough average across the board. So obviously there is going to be an affinity difference, there is going to be a raw difference. However, the biggest difference between these 3 heavy bowguns is just the simple fact of Gore Magala getting critical element, which doesn't really help out the raw side, Steel Assault getting Tetrad, which is both an affinity and raw damage increase, and then Mountainous Roar getting Slicked Blade, which is a 9% affinity increase if you're wet, and if affected by Bubble Blight, it's a 21% affinity. Now, obviously, you can't have Slicked Blade active all of the time, but there are certain maps where you're near enough guaranteed at least like a 90% uptime, and there are most other maps of where you can, with a bit of smart play, you can near enough give yourself a 50% uptime, which is certainly more than what Critical Element would give you on a Pierce heavy bowgun build. So why is Steel Assault so damaging? Well, it's got one of the highest raws, although no affinity, but the main thing is it comes with standard mode upgrade, which is a 10% increase in its essential raw damage for spread, normal, and pierce. I actually don't know if it actually affects the ignition mode, but Mountainous Roar gets something similar, but not quite, with the ignition mode upgrade, which is a 10% increase to ignition mode specifically. So when we actually now factor in how quick or slow or the overall uptime of ignition mode, how quick we can build up that gauge and then fire off ignition mode, we can then actually start to do a more direct comparison over a duration that isn't just burst DPS or sustained DPS, which is what this is. Now obviously Steel Assault mag for mag, that's 10 magazines for a total of 13,030 damage. Mountainous Roar again, 10 magazines for 11,800 damage, and then we swap to Wyvernheart. Steel Assault gets 1,928 across all 40 hits, and Mountainous Roar gets 2,239. What the next test was to empty the gauge fully and keep firing until the gauge is full, and then get all 40 shots off with Wyvernheart, and then tally up the total damage, which gave us these lovely numbers. Steel Assault from empty to full, and then Wyvernheart 7,107. Same again with Mountainous Roar 6,977. So this massively closes the gap, which also then leads into one weird problem, and that's actually trying to build both of these weapons for optimal performance, which for Steel Assault means optimizing our uptime on our damage. So opener and precise is going to be great in there, As for the 2-slot deco, Critical Duel is probably our best bet. We've got more than enough affinity, so we might want to up our damage with a crit. And then for that final deco, you can either go for another Critical Boost 1, maybe an Expert. I opted for another Precise just so that I can play a bit more of the range game. Then for Mountainous Roar, we want Focus, Precise. You can just go for level 3 Focus Duel, but adding in a Precise just helps out. True Shot to increase our special ammo, and I've added another Expert in just to help mitigate some of the lacking areas of where you can't get Slicked Blade up, but it's a personal choice for me. Now when we actually tally out the numbers, it becomes very clear that in order to get Wyvern Heart back up, Steel Assault requires 4 magazines, where Mountainous Roar only requires 3. And when we just tally that in, Wyvern Heart 4 magazines or 3 for Mountainous Roar, and then Wyvern Heart again to fully optimize and give both weapons the chance to shine, we get these numbers. Steel Assault with 2 Wyvern Hearts and 4 magazines, 2 WH, 4M, we get 8,486, whereas Mountainous Roar, 2 Wyvern Hearts, 3 magazines, because that's all it took to redo Wyvern Heart, we get 7,868. Yes, Steel Assault is still winning, but if we factor in now that 4th magazine, which was another 1,067 damage, we end up with 8,935. Essentially, these two weapons play back and forth as to whether or not you can keep a constant uptime or a relatively good uptime on Wyvern Heart. If you can, Mountainous Roar. If you can't, Steel Assault. So, that is my take on Mountainous Roar. I actually quite like it. I think it's actually become my new favourite heavy bowgun, as in order to actually get quite a lot of your damage out, you have to focus on the Wyvern Heart, which is something that I'm not terribly used to doing as of late. However, it is at the moment one of the best damage sources for a heavy bowgun, so it is definitely something I am now looking at investing in. And overall, it's actually just been quite fun just to use a different heavy bowgun other than Steel Assault or an Archean weapon for the elemental side of it. So yeah, have fun, good luck, don't die, it's bad for the health.